few minutes to see who is popping on live today. So yesterday was a crazy storm in my area, and I think some other places as well. It was storming a lot when I was on this live, and actually bad storms, no power. We still don't have power right now, but luckily I have a generator, and I ended up with my daughter and her husband and her 3-year-old and her 5-month-old came to the Hotel Anger overnight, and they actually just left 5 minutes ago. So my office was converted to a child sleeping quarters for a little while. So anyway, so if you're popping on, say hello. And if you are watching the replay, just let me know, #replay. Today is day 3 of Discover Your Archetypes. Today is the 3rd day of 3. And I'm so excited to be here and sharing this information with you today. So we'll see who pops on. As I said, right now I know a lot of people. There's been a lot of storms around my area. We had big trees down on my road last night. Even my husband and I went out for a bit last night and came home, and like all of my kids, all the family was here. One of them had power that lives in another town. But anyway, so I know some people said they had lost power and they'll be watching it later. So again, it does not matter. You're going to get the information at some point when you get it. So let's get started. So today we're going to talk about the 4 archetypes that everyone has. And they're the ones that tend to be the biggest ones potentially in undermining your ability to maybe reach your goals and enjoy success. And this affects every area of your life: your health, fitness, love, money, career, business, and also you kind of understand how these create like energetic blocks potentially that can be preventing you from manifesting your desires, and are actually can be the shadow aspect of these archetypes. And when you bring it to the light, so when you use the term light work or bring something into the light, it's just bringing something into consciousness, bringing it into awareness. So when it comes into awareness, then you have an opportunity to release something if it's not serving you, and then it makes it a lot easier to manifest whatever you are trying to manifest. So, all right. So, and also stay tuned till the end. I'm going to do a special gift giveaway at the very end. So again, welcome to day 3. If you're just tuning in on this one, haven't watched the other ones, I'm Nancy Anger, intuitive coach, master energy healer, and the founder of Embrace Your Archetypes, the sacred keys to awaken your higher purpose and potential in your life and business. And I'm excited to be sharing this powerful information and to help you discover how the archetypes are at play in your life and business, or everywhere in your life, whether you realize it or not. So by becoming more aware of your archetypes, you start to get clear insights and guidance directly into the heart and soul of who you are and what you love and why you love it, so that you can bring more of that into your world. Again, whether it's your work, your business, relationships, it's all connected. So today, again, I'm going to share the 4 archetypes everyone has. And so Carolyn Mace calls them the survival archetypes. Each of them plays a powerful role for everyone. And once you learn where they are showing up in your life, you can start to use them to make a powerful transformation. So the first one we're going to talk about is the victim archetype. So you can feel like you're a victim anytime that you find yourself feeling disempowered somewhere in your life, which this one can come up on a regular basis a lot at times. And I was feeling the other day like sometimes when we feel like life is coming at us and things are coming at us, that can feel like a victim. It's like, all these things are coming at us, and we can feel powerless. It's like, I remember Maya Angelou talking about being pecked to death by hens or something. It's like that image. But the other flip side is when we can shift that, and sometimes it feels like a lot of things are happening at once. But part of this, really, the victim, is shifting your perspective. So, while situations might come up where something is just feeling like it's just not fair, and maybe it's really not in some way, when it comes up, we can feel lots of emotions, right? Anger, hurt, frustration. Those are some clues that your victim archetype is making an appearance. And there will be something usually that triggers it. And so sometimes, there are times I know in my life, like we all have this, and we're human beings. Sometimes there are times when we can just feel it a lot more than others, right? Especially think about this when you're tired, you're hungry, or whatever, you're sick, whatever's going on. It's like those are times too when we can have a little bit maybe harder time when these archetypes might come up. But sometimes it can also become like an addictive pattern or something that kind of gets ingrained, especially it can develop from like the adults around us growing up or other people around us, right? It's almost like it can come through your DNA in a way, your lineage, that archetypal energy, depending how the adults in your life handled that when you were growing up. So that is kind of like that archetypal energy is like the victim consciousness. So there's this like victim consciousness energy too, right? So part of the lesson of the victim, so they all have the light and shadow, is around becoming victorious or empowered. And that empowerment comes from shifting your perspective. So this might create a response or a desire to take a physical action, whatever that might look like. It may be speaking up, making a change in your environment, your relationship. So there's something that maybe doesn't feel good or right to you, and you're responding. When you're in a victim, feeling like a victim, you feel like there's not anything that you can do. And while you can't change a circumstance, you can't change what another person does, I can't change that a storm happened outside. There are lots of things we can't change. We can't control things outside of ourselves, but it's about finding the power within yourself. So I'm feeling like more and more lately things are able to shift more easily and quickly as we become more conscious, and our beliefs, like things are becoming a little lighter, a little less dense. So often, a lot of times, again, it's the perspective that changes first, and then the action that follows naturally. So like I can look back on maybe some negative experience of like my childhood and feel like a victim. And every time I look back with that perspective, it creates that feeling again and again. So I might like, I had this bad experience as a child, and I'll recreate that feeling again and again. It's like I keep bringing that into the past, into the future. And again, doesn't mean whatever the experience was right or wrong, or that doesn't mean it wasn't hurtful to me at the time. But it's like you recreate it, you're bringing it back in. So even though it's not really happening in the moment, there's benefits, right, to claiming the victim, right? Dr. Phil used to say, what is the payoff? And of course there always is. So when you feel like the victim, then you don't have to be responsible. And if you don't have to take responsible, maybe someone else will fix it. Maybe someone else will help you. It's like, when you have a lawsuit or something, it's like there are the billboards when you go to Florida, there's tons of them, like, come and we'll fix everything or whatever. And the thing is, if you have it doesn't mean that if there's a lawsuit and someone did something that, that you should get damages for. It's not saying, this isn't saying you should not claim those damages, but it's saying not to, like, the shadow of the victim has to perpetuate. So I remember when I was younger, like seeing a guy go on to, my boyfriend's brother, he went on to disability. And for him to keep collecting disability, even as he got better, he had to kind of keep playing in that like victim role. So it was like this double-edged sword for him in a way. So stepping out of the victim mode is seeing how an experience is happening for you instead of to you. Oh, how is this happening for me? Like this, what is the gift in this? And sometimes we don't see that until later on, but there always is something. I believe, again, I think I said this one of the other days, that we call experiences to us. We might not like the way they show up, these lessons, but but when you start to look for that silver lining, which again, you might not see in the moment, you might see it later, the light, this is the light of the victim. The light part of the victim finds their power in every circumstance. Again, some are harder than others, and we're human beings. But it's not excusing or taking responsibility for anyone else's behavior, but it's claiming your power back. So for me, like 2007, I was in the burnout mill fire. My studio was in a burnout mill. It was in a fire, and it was in the burnout mill, my yoga and wellness yoga studio. It was 13 years ago, and it burnt to the ground. 61 businesses burnt to the ground. And by the end of that day, I had a temporary location for more than half of my classes. And, but I knew on some level, like it was hard. Like I went and I stood and I watched, I could see right away where my studio had been. It was burning. I knew early on the fire burned for hours because it was a huge mill. But I also knew it was the universe pushing me out of the nest. I knew it was time to grow, and I experienced so much love and support and appreciation and gifts that never would have happened probably if not for that fire. And I ended up with a beautiful new space and a transformed business. But, you know, it was hard at the time, but it wasn't, you know, I could have said, well, that person that, you know, shut off the smoke detector or whatever and could have got caught up in that as the story, and that would have been completely true. However, that wouldn't have really served me. Maybe that was the truth, but the truth was that part of me that I was going to be okay. Yes, it was like a little boop, universe is pushing me out of the nest, but I didn't stay in that mode at all. I felt the experiences, I felt the emotions of the experiences. And I also, looking back as a child, the battles and the struggles I had with my parents taught me how to stand up for myself and to see how strong that I truly am. So that's a little bit about the victim archetype. And I mentioned yesterday too, your archetypes are not you and you are not them. So when they show up, you can take a step back and say, oh yeah, I see that's my victim archetype showing up right there. That's interesting, you know, curious choice. So that's the victim. The next one we're going to talk about is the prostitute. And then after I talk about the victim and the prostitute, I'll tell a little story about the victim and the prostitute, like in a real life story of both of them connected. That's powerful. So, so the prostitute asks you, like, how do you sell your soul? How are you selling, you know, what price? It's like an opportunity to hold yourself to your highest principles. What is your price? And it doesn't matter what your price is. Like when I price a course or something that I'm doing or decide to offer something for free or whatever it is, I really listen to myself and my soul, like what feels right for me. And that's what I do. So it doesn't suck my energy, and it's like, feels like it's in my highest place or highest power. It's my high side of the prostitute archetype, right? Because I know what my value and what I'm sharing and my purpose. So it doesn't matter if someone else buys it or anything else. It doesn't matter what someone outside of me's response is, because I created it from my value, holding my value, what I chose to do. So again, so the values, and so what do you value? What are your priorities right now? Like this year, we've had a huge shift with the coronavirus, right? So your priorities and values can change in an instant at times. There are always going to be certain levels of them, but it might shift, right? So, you know, what what might you be willing to sacrifice on behalf of a loved one? And again, so the high side of the prostitute is, you know, maybe doing something for a loved one, sharing something with a loved one, doing something for them, and that's the no strings attached. When there are strings attached to something you are doing, that is the shadow of the prostitute, and that is giving away your power, because it's like, I will do this if you do this. And it's not like a clear agreement. Like, you know, you can have a clear agreement with someone, like, I will do this work and you will pay me this. That's a clear agreement. But the prostitute archetype comes in when you know, it's something a little different. It's like a little bit sneakier. Like, I'm going to do this thing for you, but I'm going to have this expectation, and maybe it's not an unsaid expectation. And if you don't do it for me, then I'm going to be upset, and then I might feel like a victim even. So that's where the shadow comes in of the prostitute. So, and a lot of people have been put to the test with that, with the coronavirus. My daughter's best friend is a hairdresser. And for a while, when this first things were rolling out, my friend's daughter did not want to be around, didn't feel comfortable being still working and being in public, and yet her boss was still trying to keep her business open and like kind of strong arming her, expecting her to still come to work and not really allowing her to speak and find her voice. So she was falling into that shadow prostitute by not speaking up. And so it's the, you know, money, her job, versus worry about her own safety. So again, the prostitute archetype, which everyone has, is here to teach you about where you're owning your value and where you're selling yourself short, where you're speaking your truth, and helping you understand what truth is, and it helps connect you to that. So, and you know you've sold yourself short the moment you do it, right? You feel it in your body, probably the sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach, that drop in your energy. So I invite you, the next time you feel that feeling, don't get mad at yourself, because it's just like, we're human beings. It's just telling you something. It's like, oh, because you can take a moment and step back and maybe change that choice or that decision that you just made. Even if it's telling the other person or the, you know, whatever the situation, like, you know, when I just said that, that doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't, you know, let me rethink this, and really give yourself permission, because you have permission. While this prostitute archetype can affect your money, it goes way beyond that. This is connected to your energy and your self-esteem, which again can come back around to money, to love, etc. So once you start to understand the archetypes, and this archetype and how it's playing out in your life, you can start to shift it and start owning your value, including financially. So a story that I am going to share here about how the victim and the prostitute archetype made a difference of $4,800 in my life. And really my self-esteem, which was the biggest thing, really standing in my power. So I had a rental agreement with a tenant that was set to renew. It was set to run for 2 years and then automatically renew for another 2 years at the end of the lease. And the rent for the second 2 years was going to increase by $200 a month. So when it came time for the new lease to begin, they didn't want to pay and started coming up with all kinds of reasons why they shouldn't have to. And this was, one of them was their victim archetype. It was like, I don't remember signing that agreement. Oh, I was really busy. There was a lot of things going on. Like, I don't think I signed it. And I could really hear this person's like child archetype going, I don't want to pay that. I don't, you know. So now for myself, I don't really like confrontations. Like I can stand up for myself and my business and that kind of thing, or my queen can stand up for other people more so. But confrontations, I'm like, you know, so if I consider their objections, their point of view, well, maybe do I really want to rock the boat And I was teaching, and actually this person was also in one of my archetypes courses at the time, and I realized, I was like, oh, this is my shadow prostitute. It's at work here, tempting me to take the easy way out, which honestly is not really ever the easy way in the long run. So once I knew that, I knew it was way more valuable beyond the money, because it really wasn't about the money, to hold myself and the other person accountable for the agreement we had. Because if I am going into the shadow, I'm gonna she's gonna be staying in that shadow too. I don't have control over her, but I have control over me. So when I had this new awareness, it allowed me to see and speak the truth. And in doing so, it really empowered both of us to step into the light, and empowered both of us. So the conversation ended up going pretty well. I was a little scared at first, but it felt really good in the long run. And I was very clear in the conversation. I'm like, hey, this is what we signed. This is what we agreed to. If I give in this my prostitute, and I just was very clear about it. And so if I followed the shadow, I would have not only left $4,800 on the table, but it would have affected my self-esteem for not living up to my own agreements and selling myself short. So again, this archetype plays in every area of your life, including like work, business, relationships, money, health. Think about like the whole give and take in relationships that we're in, or when we have children and marriage and all of those things, right? Yeah, so that's the prostitute, the victim and the prostitute. So we have two more. So the next one are the child archetypes. So everyone has the child archetypes. And these, there's 6 or probably actually even more of those. So everyone's going to resonate with, probably with all of them a little bit, but there will be one that stands out more than another. So and they all have a light and a shadow side. Every single archetype has a light and a shadow side. So the first one is the orphan child. So the shadow of the orphan, you're going to have some form of abandonment in the family or being orphaned in some way. Even if you ended up with another family, there might be a sense of not really fitting in, and a tendency perhaps to seek inappropriate families, right? So maybe think of like sometimes the people that end up in gangs, right? It's like that becomes their family, or clubs of certain, and that's like a shadow, if it's like a shadow gang. I'm thinking that it's inappropriate if it's like not a positive gang. So, but the light side is independence from learning to go it alone and conquering survival fears. So that's the light side of the orphan. Then the wounded child, right? Blames dysfunctional adult life and relationships on childhood wounds, resists forgiveness, right? I mean, I'm sure probably most everyone can definitely look back and find some dysfunctional stuff in their childhood, right? But it doesn't mean that you have this particular archetype. It's just if it's really prevalent in your life. And the light, though, helps to awaken the ability to forgive and compassion, and also you may feel a desire to help other wounded children in some way, right? Because oftentimes it's our wounds that are the thing that help us to grow and heal and help other people. Those are the things, like when I had back and neck and shoulder pain, 20 or whatever, that was the catalyst to try to heal and then to help other people. So the magical child now, right? So again, sometimes I mentioned yesterday about not picking an archetype just because you think you want that one. So that's what came up as I'm talking about the magical child. So the shadow of the magical child might be pessimistic, actually, depressed, or not believing in miracles. But the opposite is also true, like magical thinking, maybe not believing the energy and effort is required for growth. So it's like, you know, we live in a human body. If the mail's in the mailbox, you got to either walk down to get it or have somebody bring it to you. But the shadow of the magical child might think that it's going to just arrive without doing anything. But in the light side, they're the ones, they see the potential for magic and beauty, that anything is possible. And somebody that's very famous that has the magical child is Walt Disney. I mean, and look at what that Walt Disney, like the magical child and the entrepreneur archetype, and he has some other ones in there as well, but look at what, you know, what he created, this amazing legacy that has perpetuated. So I think Peter Pan is from Disney as well, but he's like, we're talking about the eternal child next, right? The shadow is like the Peter Pan, never grows up, never takes responsibility in some way, childish. Now this could be the person that maybe never takes responsibility with job or security, you know, physical security. My husband has this one. He's very responsible in those areas, but sometimes I'd say his shows up a little bit more, and sometimes emotional immaturity at times. And so on the light side of that is determination to stay young in body and mind and spirit and see things with a fresh eye, very playful. My husband, we went to like the grocery store, Wegmans, and we were in the checkout with the manager, and she had to come over and do something. And they have the little lights that they light up, and my husband just reached over and he started flicking it on and off, on and off. And the lady is like, sir, and but so that's some things that eternal child will do. So two more children, the divine child. So this is mine. I have the divine child. So the divine child shadow has trouble defending against negative forces. So my queen can defend like other people, my queendom, my kingdom, whatever you want to call it. But I've had a harder time when someone is like negative, seeing or experiencing negative forces are kind of coming directly at me. And I'll share that in a moment. So the light side of that is innocence, purity, redemption, a connection to the divine. I think I mentioned yesterday, like I think at first I thought my divine child, I thought maybe I might have had the hermit, because I have like definitely more introverted than extroverted. But I've had a very strong connection to source, and I had it as a teenager, and then I kind of stepped away for many years until I was probably in my early 30s, and then it became very strong. But I just like, I love to spend time alone and connecting with divine, etc. So I tend to see through, so this divine child, which is connected for me a lot through my sixth chakra, I tend to see the world through rosy colored glasses. I see the positive in things, the good in people. But again, that's where I can also sometimes miss that thing that's coming at me that maybe is harmful intention, and I don't see that right away. And so a couple years ago, I was doing like a 3-day master class about something else, and it was probably my first master class, and I was kind of nervous about the whole thing and the Facebook lives. And I went in on day 2 or 3, and friends were texting me, "Are you okay?" And this woman had come in that was in my group and just started creating a lot of drama and saying she was protecting me, and there was people that were trying to do negative things to me. And I was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're kind of distracting from my work. And I was very nice about it, but literally she just came out of nowhere and had this weird attack. So finally I ended up talking, and then I ended up blocking her because she didn't listen to me. But I realized a few days later, I said, oh, that was about the shadow of my divine child, and my divine child rose into the light that day. My divine child stood up for herself and saw through and was willing to see through. And it was like, I didn't notice it in that moment, but a couple days later, so it felt really good. It was like, oh, I empowered, I stepped into the light of my divine child. So the last one we're going to talk about in the child is the nature child. And so the shadow you could have a tendency to abuse animals or the environment and people. And the light is friendships with animals and connection with nature spirits, right? So I definitely, maybe Lisa, maybe I think you're going to watch this at some point. This might be one you're coming to mind with this one, your connection with the animals and nature spirits. Another friend of mine, another Nancy Blyer, she makes powerful healing tools using animal feathers and bones. And let me actually get that. I'm going to get one of mine because I have some of her stuff. Her work is super duper powerful. So yeah, so this is one. It's got, I think it's got a, yeah, the antelope horn. It's from South Africa, and I don't think it was taken off of, I think it was like, it wasn't harvested off a living animal or anything, but she makes some really cool, powerful stuff. So this is like the things potentially a nature child could create that has some other, of course, cool archetypes in there as well. So the child archetypes, the childlike spirit returns us to innocence, remembering your dreams. Really, I feel like that's one of the keys with helping connect us with quantum manifestation. And also in the shadow allows you to see where you're being childish in your life and empowers you to take responsibility, which, I mean, sometimes it's not always fun to notice and go, oh yeah, but it's always very powerful. So last year I did a client session and for the archetypes, and during the whole session there was a lot of resistance. And finally, towards the end, I uncovered she had a huge wounded child archetype, and the shadow was up big time, and she had a big wounding like 5 years before, and she was hanging on to it for dear life. And she also had the addict archetype, and so it was like she was addicted to this shadow of her wounded child. It was perpetuating a lot of pain. So but that was what kind of came through. So just kind of sometimes, just I said yesterday, just giving something awareness will start to change it, because sometimes we don't look at something because we don't know what to do about it, which that's going to be actually the next when we're going to talk about the saboteur. But anyway, I put a link up in the post with a page to connect to Carolyn Mace's page about the survival archetypes. You can take a look through and see which child speaks to you the most. So the last one is the saboteur. So the saboteur is also, the shadow is there to show you something. It's an unconscious message, and it's there for you to pay attention to, right? We need more information so we can move forward. So really, I see it, it's kind of like energetically, we're setting up a roadblock for ourselves. It could be a temporary, or it could be really trying to lead you, direct your attention away from what you're doing into something else. And the sooner you get tuned into it and pay attention, the sooner you can stop sabotaging yourself and make a conscious decision or a conscious choice. So say you're, I said this example, I don't know, a few weeks back, but for a while there, I was like both wanting to like get a little bit leaner to shift some things, but on the other hand, I was really enjoying, like my hedonist was enjoying all her food and her drink and her whatever, and I was like, So basically I said I want this, but I still want this. And in that moment anyways, the two weren't finding a way to come together. So there was kind of a sabotage. It was like the two things I wanted were conflicting with each other. So sometimes that's something that can come up. So then when I realized, I'm like, well, I'm really not ready to do this, and I haven't quite found the pathway for both of these to work. So I'm going to notice it, and then I'm going to be okay with it, because sometimes we can notice something, but we're not ready to change it. So we can feel like, oh, I'm sabotaging, and beat ourselves up. But when you can actually realize it and just make a conscious choice, well, I'm going to still keep doing this thing for now, and I know that I'm going to figure it out. If this other thing over here becomes more important, then I'm going to shift over there. But you feel a lot better, and you stop wasting energy and stop, feeling bad about something. You just become more conscious of it. So, perhaps like in a relationship, maybe you're sabotaging something there because you want to express it and you can't find words. So sometimes it helps if you like write things down. This one of the journal prompts I love is if I tell myself the truth, because sometimes we can lie to ourselves, or we hide things from ourselves sometimes. I know I do. I think a lot of people do. And then it's like, well, let me just tell myself the truth, right? That's like a little bit the people pleaser. Well, I think I should, but then when you go, well, let me tell myself the truth. So also, maybe if you have a business or a job, maybe you're sabotaging your success because you're afraid you don't know enough, or it'll be too hard or take too much time. But in actuality, of course, you only know that more once you start it. So you're kind of making it harder, and you're spending time in your sabotage. So some things just to think about the saboteur. Some ways we might get sabotage ourselves is getting distracted, like little addictions. Even if you don't have the addict archetype, we all can get little addictions. So TV, constant relationship issues, money, time, stress, other people's stuff, right? Going and fixing other people's stuff. Like today, like I said earlier on the call, like I had, my family ended up coming over and staying over last night, and I was happy to help out and happy to see them and all that, but I also had other business I was doing today, and I also made sure I did those things as well. And if it wasn't really possible because of something, whatever, and then I would have just adjusted. But so jumping from task to task, so you're kind of losing your own focus, overbooking, underbooking yourself, procrastination, overwhelm, perfectionism, exhaustion, clutter. I know someone they have a business and their voicemail is always full, so you can't leave a message on their phone. It's like these little things that we don't realize. Setting unrealistic expectations and timelines and being disappointed when it doesn't pan out, or failure. That's one I completely know well. So just when you really start to kind of know these, you can start to shift them. It's like you're breaking old survival patterns that that you created at some point for a good reason. And you probably find you're more disciplined in some areas and less so than others, part of life. But the deepest part is just to uncover why you're sabotaging yourself. What's the underlying reason? Because there is one. And as that, so it brings it from the shadow into the light. And when it does, it loses its power over you. You can't not know something once you know it. And when something is considered a little more shadowy and you're really honoring it, it can be kind of fun, right? I know, I was talking to someone the other day. She's a counselor, and my husband had said, oh, I heard a rumor about you going out with this guy, and she's like, oh, I don't know who that is. She's like, but I like a little naughtiness in my life. So it's like, it's like being okay with what is. So thanks so much for joining me. So those are the four archetypes that everyone has. Again, it's the victim, the prostitute, the child, and the saboteur. Those are very, again, they're running unconsciously for most of us. So just starting to bring them into consciousness can really be powerful. So it's been so much fun for me to teach these past 3 days, and I would really love to hear any aha moments or new awarenesses that you've gotten in these past 3 days together. There's so much more to share than I can even possibly teach in a few days. And as I mentioned in yesterday's call, we're moving deeper into 2020, but many of us are being called to live even more on purpose lives. It's like the ways that we're working before are not working so much, and coronavirus has shifted that. It's kind of woken up a lot of people to that as well in some abrupt ways. But I know some people too that are totally leaning into it, and some that are like, let me take a little breather here. So if you're an entrepreneur, a change maker, and you've been feeling called to make a difference in the world that feels meaningful to you, and a way to even learn and discover more about yourself and more about your purpose, and you're not really sure maybe where to go from here, and you want to create a sustainable life and a successful business, or really this for, people with business owners, people that have business ideas, but also people that do want to bring a change into the world. So in a way that feeds your soul and awakens more of your soul gifts. So the archetypes are such a powerful tool to do this. So if this is you, if this resonates, I'd love to invite you to take a deeper dive with me into the archetypes starting in early September, and embrace your archetypes. So I see them really as a guide to your personal superpowers, and they contain everything you need to live the life you've imagined in every area, from business and money to love and health and happiness. And of course, we're human beings, we'll have speed bumps along the way. That's just part of it. But if you know that you were born for something more, like the more I've stepped into or shared the archetypes with clients, it's like it just wakes up these new parts, and it kind of brings these things to life that have maybe they've been there all the time, but it just really kind of ignites this new energy and new fire, and that comes into everywhere in your life. So there's 9 powerful modules, which always include a healing, a meditation, or an activation. And I always record those separately during the class so you can listen to them over and over again. And in some of the modules, like these 4 archetypes that I just shared, the saboteur, the child, the victim, and the prostitutes, each one is going to have its own module to really dive in deeper and explore the shadow, how the shadow is showing up in your life, and then how to empower it along with your other archetypes. And then really this is about connecting you more with what lights you up, what brings you joy. It makes a difference in your life, in your business, your career, and it even includes a special money module, because it's a lot easier to do the work that you love when you have the cash flow to support and sustain you. And I mentioned a couple amazing bonuses. Yesterday's called Archetype Chakra Balancing Meditation to connect you, introduce you to your circle of archetypes, so you get that even before the course starts. And there's also a guided energy healing to align and balance your chakras. And this, again, you could do this every day to really kind of really clear your energy field and connect to your archetypes. And then also a powerful calling back all of you activation to help really release and clear old programs, vows, and beliefs that are kind of maybe keeping you from, that have kind of blocked you from seeing or really embodying or owning or loving parts of yourself, right? And reconnects you back into the truth of who you are, and again, connects you to your personal archetypes and your archetypal guides who are here to support and empower you in fulfilling your deepest purpose. So the value of the bonus is almost $2,000, and right now it's 60% off, which includes an early bird discount of another $200 more off. And when you register by August 11, which I think is the last day of the the Soul Lionsgate portal, you get a fast acting bonus of worth $777. You get a 1-hour powerful session with me plus a 30-minute follow-up call to really get your own individual, some more deep diving. So I posted a link in the original post. There's pay in full, there's payment plans. I know, and I've seen others that I've worked with, know the satisfaction and success of creating a soul-led business that I love. And so if you feel the call, I'd love to continue the journey with me. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And again, share any ahas you've had in the archetypes, about the archetypes in the comments, and I will be picking a few people in the next, from over the past 3 days, to win a free 20-minute archetype phone reading with me, so we can kind of dive in a little bit and do a little short reading, a little fun reading on some of the power that's coming through some of your archetypes. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a beautiful day.